Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I am super excited to share with you 10 classics that are on my bucket list to read that I cannot wait to get to. I have a pretty wide range of classics on this list. I'm super excited to share them with you guys. Feel free to pop your classic bucket list down in the comments. I would love to know which classics you are planning on reading or which ones you've been really wanting to get to, if any. But let's get into it. The first one on my list is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This is a book that this is beautiful, by the way. This is a gift that my husband gave me a couple years ago for Christmas. This particular version of The Art of War has a whole bunch of case studies along with the original text that show different battles and campaigns throughout military history, which I think is going to be a really interesting twist to read the original Art of War text alongside seeing some case studies of how the military wisdom is being played out in the historical battles, campaigns, etc. I also love in this copy how it has the original Chinese text on one side and then the English translation on the other. So anyways, this is the first classic that I am very excited to get to. Next up on my list is Scaramouche by Raphael Sabatini. This is a classic that my grandfather is a big fan of, and I have had it on my list. I've had the copy of this book for ages, and I just have never jumped in. I know that I'm probably looking at something somewhat similar to a feel like, I don't know, maybe like the Three Musketeers or Count of Monte Cristo or Les Mis, like that kind of a writing style / denseness. So I'm gonna read you guys just the tiny little bit of the back of the book because I think this is a really interesting hook. Raised by a supposed godfather, Andre Louis Moreau knows nothing about his background or his real parents, not even his real name. All he knows is that he wants vengeance against the vicious, arrogant aristocrat who brutally murdered his best friend. As France plummets into revolution at the end of the 18th century, Moreau's journey toward revenge takes him through several careers. So I'm kind of feeling like it's gonna be a murder mystery / political aristocratic thing. I have no idea, but knowing my grandfather, this has to have a lot of really interesting action and intrigue to it. So I'm very excited to get to this. Next up is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I just recently got this copy of it. I tend to struggle a little bit with epistolary novels, I'm not gonna lie. However, Dracula is one that has been on my list forever, and it's something that I know I really need to read. My husband has read it and has really encouraged me to get into it at some point, so I'm hoping that this is probably gonna be a 2023 read for me. It's honestly not incredibly long, and I think it'll be pretty easy to read. We'll find out. I'm anticipating that, going into this book with kind of our modern sensibilities of recent vampire tropes is gonna be completely subverted and torn apart by this book in a good way. I'm here for that. I'm so ready for it. So I'm very excited to read this. Next up is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is not the first Dostoevsky that I will have read. I did read Notes from the Underground earlier this year, and it was really interesting, actually. It was depressing, but also philosophical, and it made you ask lots of questions. It's very, very short. So if you're ever wondering, how do I get a taste of what Dostoevsky's writing style is like without committing to something like this, definitely check out Notes from the Underground and let me know what you think of it. But The Brothers Karamazov follows, I believe, 4 brothers, and they're all kind of cracked. Each one of these brothers has their own fatal flaw, and the 4 of them become involved in the murder of their father. And I'm just really curious to see what the Dostoevsky buzz is about. I know a lot of people that really enjoy him as a classic author. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be something very different than what I usually read, and even when it comes to classics, so I'm looking forward to reading this. And I mean, having 4 brothers covering up a murder sounds like an interesting time, so we'll see how it goes. Next up, I'm going to pull King Lear by William Shakespeare. This is one of the few major William Shakespeare plays that I have not currently read. I've read so many Shakespeare plays. I took Shakespeare classes in college. I was in theater all the things. But King Lear is one that I had never actually read, and I know that that's like a fatal, awful thing. From what I can tell, this is the one that like smart people love. People who really love character work and really deep themes and all that kind of stuff. I'm honestly not a giant William Shakespeare fan, so as far as an author, neither here nor there. However, I have high hopes of really enjoying this play. I know my husband's a big fan of it. I know that I think Alan from Library of Alexandria is a big fan of it. I just, you know, want to read it so that I have read it and that I can have a part in the discussions of the people around me who love this play. Next up on this list is The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu. This is a Japanese classic. It's about a prince, and he's a bit of a playboy from what it sounds like in the description, but it really details a lot of court life and ancient Japan's political scene. I've been focusing especially on Korea, but I'm also making some room for some Japanese literature, and I'm really excited to read this classic. Next up, we have Till We Have Faces, a myth retold by C.S. Lewis. Now, this one is the myth of Cupid and Psyche retold by the master of the Chronicles of Narnia. Do we need more than that? I honestly don't know anything about this book. I do know that it's not super long. It looks like it's going to be a pretty easy read. And I honestly didn't even know that C.S. Lewis wrote a myth retelling until like a year ago. So I'm very curious to get into this one and see what it's all about. I'm excited to see Lewis's take on some Greek mythology. Next up on the list, I have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is a tiny, tiny version of this book. It's one of the like pocket classics. This is not a very big book, even this tiny, with fairly small sized text. It's only 280 pages, so I have a larger copy of it coming, but I kind of want to read it in this little tiny pocketbook size thing because it's really cute. But this is the story of a man who has it's kind of like an alter ego slash split personality. And what's interesting about this book is that it came out right around the early time when what they were calling split or dual personality was just being kind of discovered and experimented on slash researched. I'm just curious because I know that this is a very prolific classic. I know that it has inspired a lot of other stories since it was written. So now having the modern version of what they thought was dual personality at the time, I have dissociative identity disorder, and so I've been kind of like doing a little bit of research into the history of the disorder and how they started researching it, etc. A very long time ago. So anyway, this is a classic that I'm reading. I'm curious. I want to see kind of how it was portrayed and sensationalized in the beginning of its era. And yeah, I actually don't think I've read anything by Robert Louis Stevenson beside this, because I haven't even read like Treasure Island or Kidnapped or any of those. Officially, I've seen the movies and that kind of stuff, but I've never read the books. So this will be my first Robert Louis Stevenson classic. Next book, and this is the one on the list that I'm probably like the most like I want to read it, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get through it. We will see. I have Beowulf, and this is the translation by Seamus Heaney. So if this is, for any of you Beowulf nerds out there, if this is not the translation I should read, please let me know in the comments. This is the story of a warrior, and he fights a dragon, and if a dragon or a big monster, Grendel or something or other. It's a, you know, ancient Western European epic. I know very little about it other than the fact that Beowulf fights Grendel and stuff, and Grendel, you know, rages across the countryside and whatnot. So that's about all I know about it, but I did grab a copy. And I do like, it's kind of cool that it has the original language on one side and then the translation on the other. That's pretty cool. So, Beowulf is on the list. Alright, last but not least, this is a Korean classic. This is called The Memoirs of Lady Hyekyung. And I'm just going to read you guys the little synopsis that is on Goodreads because that'll be the easiest way for me to explain what this is about. Lady Hyekyung's memoirs, which recount the chilling murder of her husband by his father, is one of the best-known and most popular classics of Korean literature. From 1795 until 1805, Lady Hyekyung composed this masterpiece, which depicts a court life whose drama and pathos is of a Shakespearean proportion. Presented in its social, cultural, and historical context, this complete English translation opens a door into a world teeming with conflicting passions, political intrigue, and the daily preoccupations of a deeply intelligent and articulate woman. So this book really is going to give me some insight into the court life of ancient Korea and kind of some of the political intrigue and what was going on at the time, but from the perspective of a lady of the court, which I'm very excited about. I would say on this list, this is probably at the top as far as which of these I'm most excited to read. I just think it's going to be absolutely fascinating, and I cannot wait to get into it. Alright guys, those are my top 10 most anticipated classics to read in the next couple of years, hopefully. Here, we'll see. I don't know if I'll get to all of these in the next year or two. I'm gonna do my best. But I, again, would love to hear it down in the comments. Let me know which classics you have on your bucket list, which ones, if you're currently reading any, or which ones you're most excited to get to. I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you are all having 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.